Guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Sean, and today I'm going to do a part two of a video I did almost a year and a half ago about titles from 1989. And why 89? Great year for music. Second off, it was sort of the beginning of vinyl's dark age. By that year, cassettes had been outselling vinyl for about 6 years. CDs had been outselling vinyl for about 3 years, and a lot of retailers weren't stocking vinyl anymore. And so by '89, most titles were still being pressed on vinyl. The problem is you just couldn't find them anywhere because, like I said, retailers had kind of started to give up. And so, even super popular albums that sold tons and tons of copies from that year, you don't see them on vinyl because they didn't sell a ton on that format, right? They were all on cassette and CD. So, about 16 months ago, I did a video that showed everything I had from 1989. And in that time, I've added a fair number of titles to the library behind me here. And so figured I'd go ahead and show you guys some newer stuff that I've added. And who knows, might find something interesting, something new to check out. So hope you enjoy this. So let's go ahead and get down to business. So the first one I've got here is a group called Voivod, and this is kind of oddball heavy metal. Um, it came out on a major label, came out on MCA, and I would venture to say that most people that like 80s heavy metal will probably find something to like on this. I don't know if most people would say that they'd love this whole album start to finish. I probably don't love it. I like it, but I probably don't love it top to bottom. But there are some absolutely killer tracks on this. So if you're an 80s metal fan, you never heard this, check it out. I think it'll surprise you. Um, Next up, this is not an original pressing, but it's very early. This is the Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique. This is actually a UK pressing from 1990. And these, the US copies of these, I've actually never seen one in person. I've never held one in my hands. Um, if I ever find a clean US copy, I don't care if it's the regular gatefold like this or if it's the eight-sided panel cover. I don't care which one. I will get a US copy of this eventually. But right now, this early UK copy sounds great and just find a warm spot on the shelf. All right, next up is a hair metal classic from that year. This is Twice Shy by Great White. This thing is in gorgeous condition, near mint all the way around. Looks like whoever bought this originally didn't like it. I don't know how you don't like this record, but I digress. So this has probably Great White's biggest hit on it, which was Once Bitten, Twice Shy. And let's see, yeah, tons of good stuff here. So, if you like anything else from from Great White, any of their other albums or just hair metal in general, you can't go wrong with this one. All right, in the last video, I had shown a live album by Rush called A Show of Hands, and I said I didn't have the studio album that they put out that year. Well, now I do. So here's a nice U.S. original of Rush's album Presto. And Presto was an interesting record because in '87 they put out Hold Your Fire, which is probably my personal favorite Rush album, but it is just synth city. And very '80s production and all that, but it's aged well. But fans, even still to this day, fans of Rush are either seem to really like it or really hate it. And I think Rush knew that, and so on Presto they tried to kind of ditch the modern production value, kind of go back to a more guitar rock type sound, and it works. I like Presto a lot. Um, I definitely like the synthy stuff more, though. I mean, uh, if I'm in the mood for '80s Rush, I will just say also that I'll take anything Rush did in the '80s over anything they did in the '70s. That's not to say the stuff they did in the '70s is bad. Certainly, it's not. They put out some classic albums in the '70s, but whenever I go for Rush, 9 times out of 10, I'm grabbing a Rush album with a year from the '80s in the copyright date, and I don't know. I don't. Presto just, I don't know, this album has always just kind of washed over me. I like it a lot more now than I used to, but I don't know, the synthy stuff is where it's at for me. So I mean, when I pull a Rush record off the shelf, most of the time, it's either going to be something like Grace Under Pressure, or it's going to be Hold Your Fire, or Power Windows. Moving Pictures. Moving Pictures is kind of more of a rocky type thing, but that was where it kind of all started. But Presto's a great album. It's just one of those that I like the other stuff they did in the '80s more, I guess. But all right, here is one from Gloria Estefan called "Cuts Both Ways." This actually has one of my favorite of her songs, "Get on Your Feet," on it. I've loved that song ever since it was on the radio when I was a 10-year-old kid. I'll love that song until the day I die. But this record is actually really, really great. Um, it's I don't think there's a bad track on it. So and usually these are fairly cheap when you find them. So this is the textbook example of cheap heat. All right, some schmaltz for your Wednesday evening. This is Michael Bolton's Soul Provider. This was where he started to become Michael Bolton started out as a hard rock singer. He was in a band called Blackjack, and then put out some solo records in the '70s and '80s that were, just good rock and fun. I mean, his self-titled album from 1983 is just loaded top to bottom with just radio-friendly, fun, rockin' tunes. And then somewhere along the line in the '80s, he decided to become this, almost like, I don't know, stiff kind of singer that sang these really soulful and bluesy ballads, and kind of became this guy who we all made fun of as a kid because, he's that soulful voice of his got your mom and your grandma hot and bothered back in the day. But this, now that I'm an adult and I look back on it, I listen to this. This is a good record. I mean, it's schmaltzy, no doubt, but there is definitely some good tracks here. So I mean, it's Michael Bolton, and I feel like this album is important enough in the history of pop music that it warrants a place in the library. All right, here is a banger. So this is an album from Bonham. This is the namesake band of Jason Bonham, son of John Bonham, Led Zeppelin drummer. And this album is like, it's got a little bit of a prog type feel, but it's just good rockin' music. And this album has to be heard to be believed. This is one of my favorite records of the '80s, and this is called "The Disregard of Timekeeping" is the name of this album. Highly recommend it if you've never heard it. All right. Next up, so for those who know my musical taste well, Genesis is my favorite band of all time. However, their solo careers, I mean, Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel, of course, I love their solo stuff. I like some of the Mike and the Mechanics stuff. Tony Banks, his solo career was a lot of pompous, self-indulgent type stuff. And this was an interesting thing. So this came out in '89, and this is a band that he formed with Alistair Gordon and what the hell was her name? Janie, her name's, oh, Janie Climack and Alistair Gordon. Yeah, so it was the three of them. The band was called Bank Statement. This is their one and only album, self-titled. And there's plenty of decent run-of-the-mill pop rock on this. Nothing super outstanding, but I mean it's a fine listen. Uh, but this, I'll admit, is just one that I have because I'm a huge Genesis fan. So we all have records like that just are in the library because of some reason that has something other to do other than the music. All right, next up is a film soundtrack. So here's the soundtrack for the movie Rain Man. Fantastic movie if you've never seen it. Um, so side one is some of the songs that appeared in the movie, and then side two is the movie score that was done by Hans Zimmer, and great soundtrack. Um, This is one of the best alternative rock albums of the '80s. Here's God, this is so nice. Ugh. So this is the real thing by Faith No More, and this has one of their best known songs on it, "Epic." And this is a gold stamp promo copy. You can see the gold stamp down there. That's funny too. Some of these albums that came out in '89, sometimes the promo copies are actually easier to find than the stock market copies. But yeah, so this is just a great alt rock album. Bands like Nirvana and all of the bands that we all fell in love with in the '90s, they all would cite Faith No More as an influence. These guys are fantastic. Um, all right, next up, this is arguably the best album from XTC. This is called Oranges and Lemons. XTC is one of those bands that people are either really into or just not at all. But I think even people that aren't huge fans of XTC will find something to enjoy on this. This was a little out of their element, and it works beautiful. Um, Okay, so this woman is not really remembered for her music, unfortunately. She should be, but she's not. These days, I think she's really kind of remembered as that girl who dated Kip Winger in the '80s. But this is Fiona. This album is Heart Like a Gun. And this is just kind of good, hard rocking stuff. And again, nothing that's like majorly stand out. I mean, there's a reason why she wasn't bigger than she was. Her stuff was good. It wasn't different. It didn't stick in people's minds. But perfectly great record to enjoy. So if you like some of the harder rocking stuff from the '80s, you should check this out. It's a great record. All right, this one was a commercial powerhouse in the '80s. This thing sold millions, and rightfully so. This is The End of the Innocents by Don Henley. Um, this has just so many good songs on here. The Heart of the Matter, obviously the title track, New York Minute, How Bad Do You Want It is great, Little Tin God. These are so much good stuff here. All right, so here's a R&B album from 1989. It's just called Chucky by Chucky Booker. Chucky Booker is a guy that was on my radar as a kid. I remember this album. I think I had it on cassette when I was a kid. But he's not really remembered these days, but he had one or two songs that I know were on the radio. That's how he would have been on my radar back then. And I really like this album. I mean, if you like stuff, like Babyface and some of that other R&B stuff that was coming out in the late '80s, you'll like this too. It's all pretty similar in style. Um, all right, another soundtrack. Absolutely horrible movie, but wonderful soundtrack. This is the soundtrack for Earth Girls Are Easy. And on this, you've got artists like Hall and Oates and Information Society, and let's see, the B-52s, Depeche Mode, Jesus and Mary Chain, Stuart Copeland from The Police. I mean, there are just so many great artists and great songs on this. Like I said, the movie is absolutely terrible, but yeah, the soundtrack is fire. All right, here's another commercial powerhouse from the year. Here's Like a Prayer by Madonna. This is one of those where I'd been after the right copy of this for quite a while. I like my Madonna records to be nice and clean, and I'm not above buying VG copies of a lot of stuff, but for Madonna, I like this stuff to be nice and clean, and this copy is just beautiful. So very happy to have this because this is one of her all-time great records. All right, a little more on the hair and glam side. This is an album called "Save Yourself" by the Macaulay Schenker Group. So, for those who don't know of this group, there was a guy, Michael Schenker, who was one of the very early guitarists for the Scorpions back in the '70s with his brother, and then he left the Scorpions and moved over to UFO, where he was the lead guitarist for a while in the 70s. And then when he left UFO, he formed his own group called the Michael Schenker Group, or MSG. And they put out a few records in the 80s. And then that band broke up. And so he got together with a vocalist called, or named Robert McCall, or Robin McCauley, rather. And so Michael Schenker and Robin McCauley formed MSG 2.0. This time, instead of the Michael Schenker Group, it was called the Macaulay Schenker Group. And this album is the one that has their biggest hit on it, called Anytime. And these days, if you find hair metal playlists, or you listen to something like Hair Nation on Sirius XM, you'll hear Anytime. It's in regular rotation. It's a great song. So yeah, this is just great hair metal from the period. Highly recommended if you're into that stuff. All right, this is probably Debbie Gibson's best remembered and best loved album. It's called Electric Youth. Um, she just did a 35th anniversary tour of this record, if I remember correctly. And this is just great pop all the way around. I've always been a sucker for just good pop songwriting, and this is just full of it. And she wrote all the songs on this. You can see it right there. All songs written by Debbie Gibson, and yeah, this is just great pop, and I love it. Always been a sucker for good pop. All right, this is an interesting record. So this is called "Twist of Shadows" by a group called Zymox, and I guess the best way I could describe this is like synthy goth type rock. It's really cool. It's unique, and I really like it. This is released on Polygram in '89, and I don't see Zymox records too much, but whenever I do see them, I tend to pick them up. And yeah, so like I said, synthy goth is probably the right way to describe that. Worth checking out. All right, a little bit of country. This is a group called Bailey and the Boys. The album's called Turn the Tide. And this, it's pretty typical fare, kind of poppy country that Nashville was doing at that time. Nothing super special, but it's a good listen if you like 80s country. Here's some good punk, some real nice punk. This was released on Lookout Records. Let's see, yep, March '89. So this is an album called Energy from Operation Ivy. Great stuff. I believe this was Operation Ivy's only full-length LP that was released while they were a band. I know they put out some other stuff on some punk comps and things like that, but I think, and I could be wrong, I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure this was their only LP. All right, so before Concrete Blonde got super popular with the song Joey on their album Bloodletting from the following year, 1990, they put this out in '89. This is the album Free. If you like Bloodletting, you'll like this too. Bloodletting is in a lot of ways is almost Free Part Two. This is so good. Um, okay, so this album is a testament to how ridiculous hair metal started getting, and one of the main reasons why hair metal kind of died and why grunge took over. So this is an album called OFR by Nitro. This stuff is just insane, absolutely insane. I mean, look at the guitar player, Michelangelo. A four-necked guitar. I mean, come on. I mean, this is just insane, right? And when you listen to it, I mean, it's fun, but it's just like, oh my God. So there's great hair metal, and then there's what the fuck hair metal. This is I classify as what the fuck. But it's a cool document of history. So, I throw it on occasionally. And anyway, all right. So this is, oh, I was so happy when I found this, you guys. So this is a gorgeous copy of the album 101 by Depeche Mode. And this was recorded at the Hollywood Bowl in 1988, I believe. And it is hard to believe that when this came out, the band had yet to have a top 40 hit, and they still sold out 50,000 seats at the Rose Bowl. So this album is the entire show, start to finish, no track order changes or anything, except on vinyl. On vinyl, so there were 20 tracks total. On vinyl, there's only 17 because they didn't want to make it 3 LPs, and it could only fit 17 of the 20 tracks onto 2 LPs. That said, the other three that weren't on the album came out on this 12-inch single. So this is a special live Everything Counts single that 12-inch, and it's got a couple of remixes of the studio version of Everything Counts, and then it's got the other tracks that were left off of the vinyl version of 101. So between these two records, you get the complete show. And I will just say that I don't think a better live document of Depeche Mode exists than this album. It is just so good. It is so well mixed, so well recorded. Um, I mean, you feel like you're there when you listen to this. It sounds so good. Um, so yeah, I was just elated when I found this, especially this clean. All right. Another hair metal band that a lot of people don't remember. I will say that if you imagine Bon Scott, the original lead singer of AC/DC, came back from the dead and rejoined AC/DC and said, "Guys, we need to do a hair metal album," this would have been the band they turned into. Dirty Looks. They were remembered mainly for a big single that they had around '87 called "Oh Ruby," and this is the album they put out in '89. So this is called "Turn of the Screw," and that title track is subtitled "Who's Screwing You?" And that's a great song. "Nobody Rides for Free" is awesome. "Slamming to the Big Bear," "L.A. Anna," "Love Screams." There's so much good stuff here. Dirty Looks is highly underrated, criminally underrated, I would say. These guys were fantastic. Um, all right, a little bit of '80s prog. This is the album "Season's End" by Marillion. Um, so this was the first album after Fish, the lead vocalist, left, and Marillion is another one of those bands that people either seem to really love or hate, for whatever reason. I've always really liked Marillion, or at least the early stuff. But it's interesting because I mean I like a lot of the '90s stuff too, and it's interesting because Steve Hogarth has now been the lead vocalist of Marillion for what, 35 years. And, for me, he is the vocalist of Marillion, but it is interesting to go back and listen to those early few records that have Fish on vocals. But yeah, so this was the first album with Steve Hogarth on vocals, and it's really, really good. All right, here is some highly underrated thrash from '89. This is a band called Nuclear Assault. This is handled with care. Um, And I mean, if you like bands like Testament or Overkill, even Slayer, that type of stuff, you'll be right at home with Nuclear Attack. These guys were fantastic. All right, She Drives Me Crazy, found on this album, The Raw and the Cooked by Fine Young Cannibals. Most of this album sounds about like that big hit, She Drives Me Crazy. It's that style. Fun to listen to. Good record. All right, down to my last few here. Here's some more good punk. Here's an original copy of Bad Religion's No Control. Bad Religion changed style a lot in the '90s, but this stuff from the '80s, I mean, this is, it's punk with a little bit of hardcore mixed into it, and it's just great, man. It's quick, it's to the point, it gets your blood going. I mean, everything you want from punk. So good stuff. This record shocked me when I found it. I had no idea. So, like many people, right? The only thing I knew of Sarah McLachlan was her big '90s hits, Angel and all of those songs. But apparently, her first album came out in 1989, or actually, I think it came out in '88 in Canada, where she's from, but it didn't come out here until '89. And this is a promo copy with a promo sticker on the cover. And so this is her very first album called Touch. And I tell you, I cannot believe how much I enjoyed this. This record is so good and it's so well produced and just if you like anything that you heard from her, even if it's only one song, I can't encourage you enough to check this out. It will surprise you how great this album really is. All right, here's some fun dancey type stuff. This is Club Nouveau under a Nouveau groove. Um, if you like stuff like Technotronic and that type of stuff, you'll love Club Nouveau. They're awesome. Okay, so here is the debut album from Ian McCulloch, who was the lead singer of Echo and the Bunnymen. This is Candleland, and this is one that I'd been on the hunt for a long time. It was one of those that I didn't care enough about, I guess, to go and hunt one down online. But if I ever saw one in a record store, well, I did. And yeah, this album's great. If you like Echo and the Bunnymen, especially their later in the '80s type stuff, you'll be right at home here. This is good stuff. All right, this is a cool compilation. So this is called Decade by Duran Duran, and this has all of their singles from the '80s, so all the big hits that but the interesting thing about this compilation specifically is that it tends to use the radio edits and the single mixes, the stuff that you would get if you bought it on 45. If you bought Hungry Like the Wolf on 45 or whatever, you would get a special single mix, or you'd get a shortened version that the radio would play. So I guess in a lot of ways the songs on Decade are the actual versions of those songs that got popular, right? Which is cool for a compilation like this to give you the single versions and stuff like that. So if you like anything from Duran Duran, I would consider this almost essential. Unless you want to go and collect all the 45s, which I certainly don't. But yeah, I really think this is essential. It's awesome. All right, I got two more here. So speaking of Technotronic, here's Trip on This. This is a remix album. And this has it's got Spin That Wheel, which was actually used on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles soundtrack in the early '90s, I believe. And then it's got some other stuff. Get Up. Oh, I love Get Up, Get Up, Get Up, Get Busy. Good stuff. Um, let's see, Pump Up the Jam. It's got a remix of that. Yeah, this is just fun stuff. Some of these remixes are done by Shep Pettibone and some other well-known producers of the time. So this is just a fun, dancey record to listen to. And then lastly, I've got this. This is the final album by the Jacksons. This is the most recent edition of the library, and this is the only album that they recorded either as the Jackson 5 or the Jacksons that did not have Michael or Marlon on it. Michael and Marlon do make an appearance on the title track, 2300 Jackson Street, which is a reference to the address of the house they all grew up in Gary, Indiana. Um, but it's funny because when I listen to this, I don't really miss Michael or Marlon very much, and I'm sure that a lot of that has to do with with just the excellent production that was done on this. Um, and the songs are just good, dancey, poppy tunes, and I mean, I enjoy it. And I've had this on cassette for a while and never found a clean vinyl copy until a few days ago. And yeah, so I jumped on this. This is again Cheap Heat. So the band here is just Jermaine, Jackie, Tito, and Randy. And yeah, so if you ever find a copy of this, you like any of the other Jackson's records, Victory or Triumph or any of those others, you'll be right at home here. Good stuff. All right, well, that's what I've got for you guys. So hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe found something new to check out, something you didn't already know about. And feel free to comment below. And hope you guys have a great evening.